Hey y'all and welcome back. It's another light schedule this week, but there are still plenty of names I'm circling to watch in the upcoming slate of games. As usual, I'll be identifying 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends who are eligible for the 2025 NFL Draft that I'll be watching this coming weekend. If you've been checking out this series for a while, again, I apologize for moving the release dates around like this, but I plan to stick to this Tuesday release schedule as I think it'll be better for the series and channel and everyone long term. Speaking of the channel, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on future watchlist videos and future content, be sure to subscribe. With all that out of the way, let's see who's worth checking out this coming weekend. Starting out this list, we have big-time riser Miller Moss from USC. Moss was someone I didn't include on my summer rankings this summer, simply because we had so limited film on him, with him only getting cleanup duty and a single start last year against Louisville in the team's bowl game. But I do need to point out that a performance that bowl game was remarkable. So, it was less that I wasn't a believer in Moss's talent, but just needing to see more from him to really get a gauge where he would belong on that list with the rest of the quarterbacks. Well, so far, Moss has clearly proven that he belongs with some of the better quarterbacks. After an underwhelming start by a lot of quarterbacks, Moss has looked great with great timing and anticipation to pair with really nice accuracy. Just from a casual viewing of him, he seems to really pass the eye test and may need to be taken seriously as a quarterback prospect. Now, I still need to get an idea of how seriously he can be taken based on how strong his arm is and how his pocket presence is. And with his limited rushing upside, he'll need to be great from the pocket if he wants to be considered by teams. I'll also need to be able to see if he can keep this up all season and continue against tougher competition all throughout the season. Speaking of tough competition, Moss will get a good test this Saturday when he travels to Michigan. Just as Ewers stepped up against Michigan a couple of weeks ago, I'll be interested to see if Moss can do the same and raise his draft stock like Ewers did. So check out Moss this Saturday against number 18 ranked Michigan at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. I mentioned before that a lot of the other prospective quarterbacks for the 2025 class have had underwhelming starts, and that's been the case for Jalon Daniels from Kansas. After missing most of the 2023 season due to a back injury, Daniels entered the 2024 season as a number of people's sleeper quarterback. However, it's been a really rough start for Daniels so far. It's only been 3 games, but Daniels' footwork and comfort in the pocket has been erratic, leading to incredibly inconsistent accuracy and just looking out of control at times. There might not be a better display of these issues than Daniels' game against UNLV when he looked on fire to start the game, completing 7 out of 8 passes for 100 yards, and then immediately fell apart, only completing 5 out of 16 passes for 53 yards and 2 bad interceptions to finish the game. The strong arm strength and movement skills are great, but if he's going to struggle with fundamentals and accuracy, then he's closer to Malik Willis than Lamar Jackson. There's still a lot of time left, but Daniels unfortunately seems trending towards returning for another season as he just doesn't look ready for the NFL right now. At best, I could see him as a high upside backup, but I don't see much benefit in him declaring for the draft with that outlook rather than returning to school and hope for a better outcome next year. So with both time and quality matchups running out, I'll be watching Daniels see if he can right the ship and get back on track. So be sure to check out Jalon Daniels' travel to West Virginia to play them on Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Moving on to running backs, I'll be interested in watching Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State. For my summer rankings, I was lower on Gordon than most, and I feel like I've seen a bit more people slightly start to shift towards my ends of thoughts. To start things out, I want to make it clear that I don't think Gordon is a bad running back. He's actually quite a decent back, and as he contribute on big plays and can be used as a receiver as the stats make it clear. What I do have concerns about is how much of his production is due to volume and how much he can really create for himself with dynamicness. What I mean by that is if you watch him, he can break tackles, he can make plays catching the ball, and can get big gains, but often isn't getting too much past what is expected. He's not escaping tackles at an elite rate, he can make short receptions out of the backfield but isn't being used out of the slot or adding much upside as a receiver, and his big gains often require good blocking rather than him setting up blocks or finding a cutback lane. So again, I don't see Gordon as a bad back, but I just can't get as excited about him as I can with some of the other backs in this prospective class. After a really rough showing against Arkansas, and even more concerning performance against Tulsa, I'll be interested to see if Gordon can rebound against a tough Utah defense when they take them on this Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Another back that I wasn't as high on as a few others, but one I'll be watching is Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. Monangai's attitude makes him so much fun to watch, to never avoid contact and wanting to crush his opponents while running the ball and while in pass pro. Monangai has been off to a hot start statistically, already putting up 373 yards rushing in his first few games. That number already made me interested in watching him, However, taking a closer look at those numbers diminishes this a bit and made me a bit more interested in seeing what's really going on. First off, Monangai put up those numbers against very weak competition playing both Akron and Howard. While he did force a fair number of tackles, he only forced 12 missed tackles on 46 rushing attempts, which is a pretty mediocre number given the competition. Also, only about half of those yards came after contact, and it was clear if you watched the game that he was just a better athlete than the competition, and the blockers created some pretty big holes, making things a lot easier for him. Finally, my biggest complaint about him is his lack of involvement in the receiving game, which continues to be a theme this season, getting only a single reception for 3 yards so far. It's also not like the team didn't have to pass, since they've had close games with both teams for the first half and early in the third quarter. So I'll be interested in watching Monangai play against better competition. I want to see if the team gets him more involved in the receiving game. Even if he runs with the same tenacity against better opponents, the continued lack of use in the receiving game will continue to cap his upside. So I'll be watching him travel to Virginia Tech to play them at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Going to receivers, I'll be interested in watching Kyren Lacy from LSU. I was pretty low on Lacy in the summer, feeling that he benefited from Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. taking away a lot of attention and giving Lacy easier opportunities to win. However, Lacy has so far been proving me wrong and has shown that his route running is strong enough to get separation despite the added attention. I still have some concerns about Lacy, especially with his age, but his route running, hands, and body adjustment abilities are undeniable and have made him a very favorable target for Garrett Nussmeier and could make him a favorable option for an NFL quarterback. That being said, while Lacy's numbers against USC were exciting and what drew a lot of people's interest, it's important to note that he got shut out in the second half and failed to secure reception for the rest of that game. We saw a bit of the same thing against South Carolina, except the opposite way, as Lacy didn't make his first catch in the game until there was about a minute and 20 seconds left in the first half. Things like this can happen even for top receivers, so it's not worth panicking about. However, I think it is good to keep an eye to see if teams continue to slow him down like that. While the matchup against UCLA isn't that difficult, they do have a quality defense, and I'll be interested to see which Lacy we get. The first half Lacy against USC and the second half against South Carolina, or the Lacy who nearly got shut out for those other halves. So check out Lacy take on UCLA on Saturday at 3:40 p.m. Eastern. The other receiver I'll be planning to watch this weekend is Nic Anderson from Oklahoma. Anderson is a player I saw a number of people very high on going into this season, but I just have a hard time trusting him. He has great straight line speed and size, but questionable hands, and I'm just not certain if he can be more than just a vertical threat for a team. While a vertical threat is useful for quarterbacks and schemes that love to throw it deep, if you don't have either that would use a quarterback like that, it makes you pretty limited in that offense. Anderson has missed Oklahoma's first 3 games this season due to injury and nearly returned last weekend against Tulane, but the team ultimately decided to give him at least one more week to recover. Maybe Anderson isn't ready to play this coming weekend, but I think they realize that they likely will need him more than the coming schedule with it picking up rather than against Tulane. So with a tough matchup against number 6 Tennessee, I'll be interested in watching Nic Anderson take on Tennessee on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern to see if he can be more than just a vertical threat and to see if he's fully healthy. Finishing things out with tight ends, I'll be watching Jake Briningstool from Clemson. I feel Briningstool entered the season a bit overlooked and still hasn't been receiving much love. Don't get me wrong, he definitely has some faults as he might be closer to a slot receiver than a tight end, but there's a lot to like about his receiving ability. He's a really good athlete with great hands, and with a lot of NFL tight ends shifting to being more receiver than tight end, I feel he will have a spot with an NFL offense. He didn't have a great debut to the season against Georgia in part due to Klubnik struggling throughout the game with pressure and keeping his composure, but Briningstool had a much stronger game against Appalachian State, and I know it is Appalachian State, so it's not worth getting that excited about, but still a plus. So now the team has another quality opponent this coming weekend, I'll be interested in seeing Briningstool take on North Carolina State on Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern and see if we'll get a performance closer to his Appalachian State performance or his Georgia Games performance. To finish out this week's list, I'll be watching RJ Maryland from SMU. I wasn't too impressed with Maryland going into this season, as I felt he was more of an athlete than a tight end. He did have a great debut against Nevada, but faded the next 2 weeks, failing to get more than a single reception in either game. I admittedly haven't watched too much of RJ Maryland and SMU this year, other than keeping track of Preston Stone's benching. So I want to take an opportunity to take a closer look at him, and honestly just see what the offense looks like with Kevin Jennings in as quarterback for the team. So with a tough matchup against TCU, I'll be interested in checking out RJ Maryland take them on at 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, and see how he looks if he's still an unpolished athlete or looking more like a true tight end. And that does it for players for week 2. Again, a bit of a small schedule for the week, but still plenty of players worth watching, and probably more that I missed. So let me know in the comments or on Twitter or X who you'll be watching this weekend. Again, I'll be sticking to Tuesday uploads for this series going forward for the rest of college football season, so be sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss any future week's videos. While you're at it, like the video as it would help the channel and the series grow thanks to you. As usual, you can check out Fantasy Trading Room as I'm a contributor for the NFL, Dynasty, and Fantasy pages there. If you haven't checked it out as well, I also do a weekly article series on Fantasy Trading Room called the College Football Stock Report that identifies 8 players who had strong performances and 8 who may have hurt their draft outlook after each weekend of college football. I include a link in the description if you want to check that out, but thank you all and see you all next time.